1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, fine. Okay, we're in good shape. Basically, all I wanted to ask you was about 3 questions.
Good.
After all this.
Good.
One was just to give a sense of what this President's Commission, National Commission on AIDS is, and why you decided to become a part of it. Should I just tell you all 3 of them and then you can figure out how you want to? The second one was just real related. What made you decide to become an activist, to go national? And then the third was just where you're at now in terms of your health and how you're feeling.
Okay.
So it's simple. Unless there was something else you wanted to talk about.
I want to talk about what a shithead Scott Allen is.
Now we're recording.
Uh-oh.
No.
Take it back.
Okay. All right. So, just what's this commission all about? What's its purpose, and why are you on it?
Well, the commission is a 15-member commission that was chartered by the Congress and includes appointments from the House and the Senate and the executive branch, and also some cabinet level people who are members just by virtue of the fact that they're cabinet secretaries. And the commission is supposed to form a national consensus on AIDS and to advise the Congress and the President on matters related to AIDS.
And how did you come to be on it? How did you decide that was the right thing to do for you?
I was the president of the National Association of People with AIDS, and when the commission was being constituted and appointed, we had noted that there were no people who actually had HIV infection or AIDS who were publicly identified as such who were on the commission, and we felt that that was a kind of a very serious oversight, and that any government body that looked at the issue had to really include input from people who were living with the epidemic every day in a real sense, and not in some abstract way like some of the other people on the commission have. They bring different kinds of talents to it, but there's only a couple of us who really personally live with it.
And why did you decide that you wanted to do this?
It was politics. At the time, as I said, I was the president of the National Association. There were 2 seats left on the commission that had not been filled. Both of them were direct presidential appointments. We had a Republican in the White House. People in the AIDS advocacy community kind of got together and tried to figure out who would be the most acceptable person with AIDS to a Republican administration. And I just kind of won by process of elimination. I mean, there was really nobody else to carry the water in terms of somebody that the administration would certify.
Now, what made you decide to get involved on that kind of national scale? What made you become an activist in this whole thing, go public and all? I'm sure that's very disrupting to your personal life. So.
Well, it wasn't a single decision that I made one day. It wasn't like I got up one morning and said, okay, now I'm going to become active in AIDS, and now this is what my life's going to be like. I'm going to go around and tell people about what having AIDS is like. It was kind of a gradual process. I got involved in the National Association and was elected to the board, which is a very easy thing to do because the board has a tremendously high turnover rate. So the first time you show up at a meeting, you can get elected to the board. So it was a very, it was easy thing to do. And because of my position there, I was offered a lot of speaking opportunities. There seemed to be a need in many parts of the country for people to hear from somebody who had HIV, who was different than the traditional groups that had been associated with. There had been a lot of people who could only be spoken to by somebody who was, if not me, then like me, And just one thing sort of led to another, and by the time the opportunity came for the presidential appointment, we found out the people who were advocating for me in my organization and other AIDS organizations in this town and across the country kind of learned that I would be, considered that I had a good shot at it, and so we really put a lot of political muscle to the extent that we had any behind hustling the appointment. We called everybody that we knew that had any remote connections to the administration, and we talked to a lot of people in the government agencies that are responsible for managing AIDS, and just hustled a lot of people and kind of schmoozed it up.
It's what I'm trying to get at is it's also a real big commitment on your part. I mean, it's a commitment of time and energy, and so what drove you to that kind of commitment?
Well, I don't think, I think again, I'd have to sort of reiterate that I never really was conscious of making a huge commitment. It seemed like things just sort of happened one thing at a time. Like I agreed to do one thing and then another opportunity came along and I agreed to do that. And before I knew it, my life had kind of turned into something else entirely. And this is really not what I would have sought out for myself, and it really wasn't that I planned to do all this. It's sort of just like one thing happened and then another thing happened, and you know how life is really like. Life is really not that you make a plan and then go out and do it. You just like get up and do what needs to be done that day, and it changes every day. And so I didn't really have any good, I had no idea that it would be like this when I was beating the streets up here and going to Congress and trying to get support for the appointment. What basically I wanted was that some person with AIDS be on the commission. And if it had to be me, then that was all right. But I just wanted to make sure that some person with AIDS was there, because I didn't feel like it could really be an effective commission unless there was a person with AIDS who was a kind of an integral part of the dialogue. But I never knew that it would be like it is. It's really strange. It's very strange to be famous for being sick, to the extent that you can say that you're, that anybody can ever say that they're famous, or I don't know if it's famous, but it's like to be recognized by people that I don't know, happens to me quite a bit, and it's because I'm sick, and that's really strange. I mean, if I ever had, and I'm not sure that I really did because I never was that good at thinking that far ahead, but if I ever would have thought about being known for something, I would have really wanted it to be my work as a writer. That would have kind of been in the back of my mind as something that would have been comfortable and pleasant, to be known like that, not for being sick. So it's very strange.
I think you're known as a spokesperson that's very eloquent, which is a little bit different. I mean, I think people respond to you as yourself too, so that it's not just the person that's sick up there is Belinda.
Exactly, but the fact remains that if I did not have AIDS, I wouldn't be doing this at all. I mean, I would be doing something else. I would be having whatever the life was that I had, which I was very comfortable with and content with. And I didn't have a lot of ambitions. I had a real good relationship with my husband and great kids, and I liked the work that I did. I had everything that I wanted, and so I would still be doing that. I mean, if I didn't have AIDS, and so it's really very strange to find that having AIDS can kind of turn you into some sort of kind of a public figure. It's weird. Yeah. It's very weird. And I tell Steve a lot, and this is really the truth. It's like, it's a good thing I'm married, because I would never get another date. I would never get a date. Would I ever get a date? No, I would never get a date. Not in Kentucky, not in Washington, not in other parts of the country where I travel and, I'm known, so. So it's a good thing that dating's really not that important to me anymore, because I would surely never get one.
How has it been? I mean, has it been okay? Is it? I know it's weird. Herb, I just let it ring, and I think it'll stop.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, aside from being weird, is there anything that's worthwhile in all this for
Oh,
you?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think the reason that I keep doing it, in spite of the fact that I know on some level that I'm not taking the best care of my health by traveling so much and by being under a lot of stress and having a lot of responsibility, is really not the best way to take care of yourself when you're sick. And I'm giving up a lot of time that's precious time that I won't have again with my family. And I think the thing that drives me and keeps me moving is that I never leave it. Every place that I am, when I leave, there's always people that say to me, I feel different now about AIDS. And I think that's too important not to do, if that's what it takes. It's too important not to do it. And I think the problem in this country has been that people were too able to say that AIDS was about other people and not about people like them. And I think that to the extent that I've made a contribution, it's been to be able to have people realize that AIDS is about all of us, and that it's not really about gay white men or IV drug users or babies, or it's not about certain groups. It's about all of us, really, and it always was. I think particularly in the kinds of areas that we live, it's always been real easy to dismiss AIDS as kind of a big city sort of issue, or a problem that was really remote from our lives. And I think until all of us in this country are able to see a person with AIDS and recognize ourselves in them, we'll never be able to mount the decent political and social response that we need.
So how are you feeling now? How's your health?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. I'm on an experimental drug. I'm real lucky. I'm able to get. I have really good primary medical care. I have the resources to travel to get care that I can't obtain where I live, and I'm well connected and aware of enough of what's going on with treatment so that I'm, right on top of whatever's breaking. And so I've been taking now for about 2 months an experimental drug called DDI. I was on the first experimental AIDS drug for 2 years, and I did quite well on that for about a year, and after that my health started to slip, and so I was able to qualify for the new drug, and I've gained some weight, and I've noticed a resolution in some of the symptomology that I was having. But I'm very tired, and I can see that there'll be a time when I'm too tired to go on. And I think, when I think about my friends that I know who have died, sometimes I think they just sort of died from being worn out with it. It's just so tiring to be sick. Sometimes it's just easier to just go ahead and die. It's just really, it just really wears you out to be sick. So I think sometimes people just die from that being worn out, So I feel myself, in a lot of ways, I feel myself slowing down. I feel my body changing. My hair comes out. I throw up a lot. I don't sleep well. I have strange infections that won't go away. I have terrible headaches. I can sort of feel myself breaking down, and there's kind of a sadness about that in a way. There's a sense of an inevitability. I know that I'm dying. I know that I am, but by the same token, I know more than ever what I've always kind of known, and that is that really all of us are done, and the choices that we make about how we live shouldn't be any different because we suddenly find out that we have an illness or we have a divorce on the horizon or some kind of transition. Or we should all live as if we're dying, because we all surely are, you know.
Do you have anything?
Well, we don't want to burn you out on the first time we get you in front of a camera like this. But I was kind of interested in, maybe you'd say something about the, let's see if I can say it. The Washington scene is so different from
Real life.
the rest of the
Yeah.
And I don't know, and just as you're here, you know, it's all fresh in your mind. You're in the thick of this kind of Washington stuff, and I was thinking you might just say a little bit about. See, I don't want to kind of make seem immodest here, but
Yeah. I think in a way, on this commission and kind of in AIDS advocacy in general, I have a really unique place because there's a lot of things that I can get away with that most people can't, you know, because of who I am. I mean, nobody's going to challenge me about what this country should be doing about AIDS. Nobody's going to challenge me about it. And so it's a real freedom and a big responsibility, because so much of what is talked about in Washington and other places where decisions are made, like Frankfurt or you know, over in Virginia, whatever the capital is over there, has so little to do with how people really live, and it's not really about people at all. It becomes almost absurd. It's just about the perpetuation of the bureaucracy, and the person, the reason that the whole system exists is just forgotten. I mean, that's been particularly true in AIDS. Once the bureaucrats appropriated it, it was real. It's real hard to remind them that the reason. I mean, it's important to remind them, and we don't. And it's easy to let them forget, and we don't. All of us that have the responsibility don't remind them enough that the reason that we sit here around a fancy table, and we say, Madam Chairman, and we say, thank you for your wonderful work, and blah, blah, blah. The reason that we're doing all that is because people are dying. When we sat in that meeting today, a person with AIDS dies every half an hour. So I don't know what, maybe 8 people today died. And like every 15 minutes, somebody else is diagnosed with AIDS. So while we were sitting there watching those slides about some abstract research method to determine whether IV drug users still have sex with condoms or not, there were a bunch of people dying, and other people getting intubated, and other people being put on life support, and people having spinal taps in their back, and people having Grosjean catheters inserted surgically in them, and people having just an array of really invasive medical procedures, and families watching people that they love die while we were sitting there in that meeting. And that's the point. If that's not the point, then I don't know what we're about if that's not the point. If there's not any way to still remember that, if that doesn't always be the most important reason why we are, all of us who are working in AIDS, then we're wrong. We've really failed.
Well, it felt like some of those guys who were supposedly actors on.
And the really disappointing thing about that, and I've been in Washington enough to know, it's so unlike real life. And the thing is, the people who could have provided, the people from the administration who could have provided the answers that we needed, and who are the people that the buck finally stops at, didn't even come. Bill Bennett, the drug czar. You know, AIDS and drug abuse are intertwined always and forever. And yet, you know, the drug czar of the country didn't think it was worth his time to come. The people at HUD couldn't find time in their schedule to come and talk about why people with AIDS need housing. So they sent their water boys. And so you sit there and some mid-level bureaucrat with a bunch of slides and a pretty little newsletter that's really slick and well done sits there and feels so proud of himself because of his presentation that he's probably set up the night before, typing neatly so he could read it well. And all of that is removed from the reality of people lying in halls, in hospitals, in New York City, in their own body waste, and their own, you know, and food. And because that's what's really happening in this country. There was a friend of mine who died in January, who was one of the first people who was really active in New York City. He worked for the health department in AIDS education, and later went to one of the volunteer organizations and had a job. He had, you know, he was a professional man. He had some money. He had a career. He had a life. When he died in the hall of a hospital in New York with a number on the wall beside of him that was his room number. But he was in the hall. He was on a bed in the hallway. And now this is like being repeated all day while we're in this meeting, and everybody's in their little nice suits, and everybody sits at the table, and everybody says, "Madam Chairman," and you know. But the reason that we're here